3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Hello and welcome back to another off-season episode of the Texas Private School Podcast. As always, I am one-third of your hosting crew for today. Walker Lott joins us from Fort Worth, Texas, and we have SPC analyst Jack Klosek here on the episode today to detail our SPC preview. Jack, number one, how are you doing, and how are you feeling about the outlook of SPC this year?
Wes, thank you so much for having me. Being able to be an analyst here is truly a blessing for me. To be able to stay involved in the game that I love, that helped me grow, is really, really special. So I've been enjoying summer, been working on vacation right now, but always staying up to date with the football stuff. And I think SPC is poised for another competitive year in terms of 4A. You got 4 teams with ESD, St. John's, Kincaid, and Episcopal that are all vying for a title, that all could contend for a title. And then in terms of 3A, 2 things kind of stand out. Number one, Trinity Valley with Gavin Parkhurst, Carter Lee, Will Scott make a run for a title. We see John Cooper maybe taking a step back. And then the rise of Houston Christian led by transfer quarterback Brent Kilchrist and athlete defensive back receiver Jordan Eli Stewart. So I think this is going to be another fun year of SPC football, and I can't wait for the season to begin.
Absolutely, dude. It never seems to fail that we get about 4 weeks into SBC play, and it's an absolute madhouse. There are dark horses. Teams are beating teams that shouldn't be winning, and it's always one of the more fun divisions we cover. Walker Lott, we haven't heard from you yet this episode. Number one, how are you doing? Number two, what are you doing back in Fort Worth? Number three, how does it feel to finally beat the Bankers?
It's been awesome. Check your phone, by the way. I just texted you to do something. But
Absolutely.
yeah, it's been awesome. We officially set up the TXPS bank account today, so that's been awesome. So that's why I'm up in Fort Worth. Not in the usual setup, but this is the risky setup for today. But it's been good. Good to go see the guys, all 3 of us in person today. So that was awesome. Finally got to see Ryan after his whole his whole thing with Team USA this off season. And all 3 of us were in a building for the first time in months probably. So it was good to see everyone now back home, come see the family. And yeah, it's awesome, man. I'm excited. We got one more week and then, I start school at A&M for one last year, my 5th year, stay strong, a whoop. And now one more year of college and one more year of Texas high school football, which I counted the other day. I have been to, in the past 4 years, over 105 games of Texas high school football. So if anyone knows, like, hey, do you know what you're talking about? I somewhat do, a little bit. So that's really it.
As the old adage goes, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. We say this over and over again. It's part of the reason we have Jack helping us, is that anyone that has any association with TXPS and our brand loves Texas high school and private school football more than the average person. We all have grown up around it. We have failed to release it going on to college, and it's created this. And like I said, we enjoy doing this. We enjoy creating content that the players and you, the fans, can enjoy. And it's just fun for us. Like I've said before, there's no more exciting feeling I get than going and covering games on Friday night. And we're very close to that. And we are very excited to kick everything back into gear here very shortly. So all of that being said, all of the pleasantries out of the way, guys, I think the best thing we can do now is jump right into our SBC 3A preview and go through our power rankings, which me, Walker, and Jack set down right before the episode, and we hammered these out. That makes it sound like we spent like 20 minutes doing this. We didn't. It was probably, at least 10 hours of man hour combined between all 3 of us. But I've spoken enough. Let's get into the TXPS SPC 3A power ranking. Starting at the top, the Trinity Valley Trojans. At number 2, we have Houston Christian. At number 3, we have the John Cooper School. At number 4, we have the Irving Cistercian Hawks. At number 5, we have Fort Worth Country Day, followed by number 6, Oak Ridge, and then rounding out number 7, Green Hill Christian. So Jack, you are the SPC analyst. I will turn to you first. We spent some time, we talked through a lot of this. There's some pretty major shakeup here. We have the reigning SPC 3A champion moving down to third. Just kind of give us an overview of why these teams land the way they do in 3A.
Yeah, so I think when you start with we can start with John Cooper, as they've dropped down from they've gone back to back. They've had a ton of talent with everybody from Vaughn McKeever to Kyler Sullivan to Blake Pitts, who graduated in 2022, now plays baseball at University of San Francisco. Just tremendous talent has gone through there. Coach DeHaven has done a great job turning around John Cooper, helped with people like Coach Eddington, their offensive coordinator. They've done a great job over there. But losing Vaughn McKeever hurts. Yeah. You can't replace what Vaughn McKeever did for the past 2 years. And he's now going on to play baseball at Lamar University in Beaumont. And is Santiago Fernandez going to take that step forward this year? I think that he's going to do a great job this year, but he's not going to be able to replicate Vaughn McKeever, especially as young as he is. John Cooper's lost a lot. Carson Berger on the defensive side of things. And I think for that reason, they're going to take a step back. And when you look at Trinity Valley, that was a high-scoring game. Trinity Valley showed some fight. Coach Matt Morrison has done a tremendous job over there. Gavin Parkhurst, Carter Lay, Will Scott, Jacob Maynard, all of those guys are really, really talented players. And they're poised to win a title for the first time since 2017. Now, the one that may have people scratching their heads is Houston Christian. And I'm going to explain kind of our thought process there. Jordan Ellie Stewart is a really tremendous athlete, tremendous defensive back. He's a track star. He's gotten Division I offers from notably from Stetson. And the transfer of Brent Kilchrist, who's a proven quarterback, showed out at our Texas Private School Media Group QB retreat. He's proven himself against 6A competition, transferring in from Klein High School. He's a lefty. Combine that with Houston Christian runs the run and shoot, so they're going to be running a lot of staple passing concepts like mesh or Y cross, kind of like the predecessor to the air raid. June Jones made it famous in Hawaii. Think Colt Brennan or Timmy Chang in the early 2000s. They're going to throw the ball a lot, and when you have a quarterback takes over like that, they're going to be poised to do some good things. Jack Henning's a really talented player as well at tight end. And then on the defensive side of things, you have Alex Klein, Joseph Trickett, as well as the aforementioned Eli Stewart and Bennett Mallory. So they're poised to take a step forward. And then rounding it out, you have Cistercian. So Cistercian loses quite a bit. Coach Beck no longer returns. First-year head coach Andre Bruce kind of has his work cut out for him, but I'm sure they are up for the task. And then from there, you have Country Day, who's kind of just been middle of the pack, same as Cistercian. But then the interesting thing about Oak Ridge is they have a pretty strong defensive line in Rodney Undari and, of course, our defensive line of the year winner, Corian Tank Thomas.
Tank.
And then rounding it out is Green Hill, who will take a step forward with KJ Williams as head coach, former head coach of Nolan Catholic, Texas A&M alum, played there. He's knows how to win coaching at a good school like Nolan Catholic. Had to deal with a lot there, but he'll be able to grow with the program at Green Hill. And there will be some growing pains, but Green Hill hasn't won a game since the first week of 2019. And hopefully, for all of us here at the Texas Private School Podcast, I hope they get that first W this year and break that losing streak. And I see them taking a step forward, maybe not to where that they're going to overtake an Oak Ridge, but I see them at least being more competitive in some of their games. So I think that kind of rounds out kind of a quick overview of SPC 3A. I really do see Trinity Valley as the clear favorite to win a title, but Houston Christian, they moved down. They were a 4A team. They had to move down because of poor play and numbers. They went 3-7 last year. They're going to be coming in with a chip on their shoulder. They're going to be looking to, Coach AJ Eisenman in his second year, looking to really improve on that 3-7 year. This is a team that lost to Oak Ridge in their last game. And a teams that wins, included, the likes of, St. John's the 23rd, Green Hill, and Country Day on, a last minute play winner. They won 29-28 against Country Day. They're going to be coming in looking for blood. And I think that they're going to take a huge leap forward. John Cooper will still stay competitive. I don't want to bet against them. Coach DeHaven, like I said, he came from St. Pius, proven winner, has won with a lot of really good teams, and taken John Cooper from a team that, has just had a football program for a decade, taking over for Brent Landrum, who started the program there, to winning back-to-back titles, first two in school history. So don't count them out either. But I think for those reasons, that's why we have Trinity Valley number one with a little bit of a drop-off, and then Houston Christian, then Cooper, and the rest rounding it out from there. But I'm curious to hear what you guys' thoughts are, Wes and Walker.
Yeah, absolutely. Walker, I'll turn it to you first. Like I said to Jack, there's a lot of shakeup here. There's going to be a lot of people questioning why the reigning champions, John Cooper, are at number 3, and how in the world Houston Christian, who finished 6th last season, we have 2nd. Just if you want to provide a little more clarity and insight to that, I think it'd be greatly appreciated by our audience.
Yeah, of course. I think after the state championship for 3A last year, I think I literally turned to Jack and I was like, hey, Trinity Valley is going to be right back here next year, and they look really good. Because we were talking about the roster, and I was like, junior. All these kids are still like sophomores and all of that. They're still young, and Parkhurst being a 25 with a state championship on appearance under his belt with all the other guys, that's huge. And the offense, they just keep getting better. They only have years to get older, and some of their most talented players are still going to be juniors. And they have a lot of youth, but also a lot of experience under their belt. And the offense looks really good. And they have a lot of weapons. And even some young guys that I'm excited about, like the 26s, Chris Houston and Aiden Atkins. Those guys played a lot as freshmen, and they're going to make a big, big help for this team. Luke Williams, Tucker Howell, Charlie Anderson, the running back Ben Negushu. He already talked about, Maynard, Scott Lee. But having those guys, I think they're deeper than a lot of other teams in SPC 3A, and I think that's what's going to help them a lot going through the schedule. And I really just like this team, man. I've said it since the beginning. After watching in the spring, I came away more impressed. And I think it really solidifies TVS as the number 1 spot. The thing about John Cooper is, I think after even us seeing him in that over the summer or spring, we say they have talent. They do. I think one of the best athletes in all of SPC 3A will be Dean Calhoun. He might be the best athlete in SPC 3A. Maybe with Jordy Ellie Stewart, he might be the other one that can compete for that title. But and Carter Lee, Jacob Maynard, depends on how you want your athlete to look. But I really like Dean Calhoun, of course, and he has one more year to just get better as being a sophomore last year. And he will take the reins as the top guy for that team, but they have a lot of questions, like he mentioned, of quarterback, a leader on defense, and all of this, and a lot of guys that are they're graduating a senior class, and also a senior class before that also graduated. So they just have back-to-back senior classes that take a lot away from the squad, and they're just young for the first time in a while, and so their young classes are getting stronger. I know that's one thing that he really the coach DeHaven really told us when we were out there was they've really gotten into the weight room in those younger classes. And so I don't think it's going to be that far of a step back, but they're just going to be young for the first time in a while, and that's going to hurt them a little bit. And then Houston Christian, seeing them in the spring, some of their athletes, I really, really am impressed with Jordy Elliott Stewart. The other guys they have, guys like Jack Henning, Bennett Mallory, Adam Shepard, guys like that, where I even saw and I was impressed with. And after coming to the quarterback retreat and competing well, Brett Kilchrist really, really impressed me, and just showed how important he will be to that offense, because with his arm, he will be probably one of the better quarterbacks they've had in recent memory, but he also is really, really good with his legs too, which I think is going to be a key piece for this offense. I really like Brett, man. I think he has the tools to kind of lead this team, has proven at the 6A level or climb, and I think he's going to help this team maybe get back to the state championship for the first time in a while for Houston Christian. But the other teams, I don't know if we've talked about yet a lot more, but that is my reasoning for the top 3 for sure.
I also think Walker brings up a great point. When we looked at Trinity Valley last year, say what you want about, numbers matter and stats matter and all that, but sometimes the good old eye test can do the trick. When we saw Trinity Valley last year playing, when you look at those guys and you see them warming up, you see them playing, the good old eye test doesn't always lie. It can be a little unreliable at times when you look at more advanced statistics. But when you look at a Kevin Parker's, a Carter Lay, Chris Houston, Will Scott, Jacob Maynard, those guys look the part. You can tell they're getting after it in the weight room. You can tell they're training. In the case of Parkhurst and Carter Lay, those are multi-sport athletes. Those guys both played baseball. Those are guys who are, football player aside, those guys are athletes who train, who fuel their bodies for competition. And especially in 3A when numbers are smaller, you need guys like that who are going to get after it in the weight room, who are going to train, who are going to be reliable, dependable, who are going to be fast, not get hurt. That makes a huge difference. And when you have guys that have proven to do that you're going to have a pretty special team. And especially when those are your leaders who are putting in the work off the field, who are leading their team in the weight room and summer workouts and spring ball, that's when you have a chance for something very, very special to happen. With that being said, the other thing, when you look at a Brett Kilchrist for Houston Christian, one thing why I'm pretty bullish on him and Houston Christian as a whole is we saw Carson Gordon go from somebody who wasn't really playing at Ridgepoint to being a star at Episcopal. That the kind of transferring in from a public school where you're playing against, for the most part, better competition, and especially a guy that played at Klein, which is a solid 6A program in the greater Houston area, playing against good 6A competition. Now you're going to go and play against really smaller schools, smaller 3A schools, and you're going to be in an offense like a run and shoot where you're going to be throwing the ball a lot, where you have some solid receivers in Jack Henning and Jordan Ellie Stewart, where you're going to be running a lot of staple passing concepts. And on top of that, you can run with your legs. They don't really utilize the running back a lot. You have a chance to do something pretty special on the offensive side of the ball. If Houston Christian can get that passing game going with a proven leader like Brett Kilchrist, and I see on social media, they have an awesome social media. You guys should go follow them in terms of both football stuff, but also devotional, spiritual stuff. It's a good follow, and they do a great job marketing their players. You can see they're putting in work. And they have a proven leader in Kilchrist. And that's why I think when you get somebody like that leading an offense that plays to your strength, you're going to be able to go from a 3-7 team finishing 6th to an above 500 team that's maybe vying for a title.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree with all the points raised up to now. I will say, and it's kind of pointing out the obvious, but a huge, huge factor in how we do these rankings is obviously it's returning production. You have a team like John Cooper that even though they went undefeated in SPC play and then won the SPC championship, there's a lot of question marks there because, yes, they bring back Dean Calhoun, who is arguably the best player, maybe besides Vaughn McKeever on that Dragons team. But they lose Vaughn McKeever, they lose Kyler Sullivan, they lose so much production. There's a lot of question marks there. Whereas TVS, you're bringing, like you said, Walker, y'all saw that roster at state last year, and it was junior, sophomore. Bringing back Parkhurst, Scott, Maynard, Carter Lay. It's really all that we have to go off at this point is how much returning guys are you bringing back, and that's big with teams like TVS. Houston Christian, I love, man. It's a bold pick, us moving them from a 2-4 district slate last year, finishing 6th to the 2nd spot. But maybe it's just the former receiver in me that loves the run and shoot, that loves the passing game. I can be a little biased in that regard. I'll fully admit, but I think all the points y'all raise are valid. I think between Brett Kilchrist, who I love how Jack said is a proven leader, we saw that at the quarterback retreat as well. He's very vocal. He throws the ball well, almost as good as anyone we saw at that retreat. Jordan Ellie Stewart, Amari Banks, and then Adam Shepard on the defensive side. Also Anderson Jones catching passes. I think they're going to be in really good hands. And plus, I'm a huge Coach Pearl fan, their athletic director, so that can also play a factor. But yeah, that being said, I think the top 3 are very, very solid. Before we get off of 3A, I want to ask y'all, rounding out after 3, we have Cistercian, Country Day, Oak Ridge, and Green Hill. Maybe with the exception of Green Hill, do y'all think anyone between Cistercian, Country Day, and Oak Ridge can possibly, play spoiler to the top 3? Jack, I'll start with you.
If any team were to do it, I think it might be Oak Ridge. I say that because their D line is really, really talented. It's tough to have one really good defensive lineman in SPC 3A, but when you have two in Corian, Tank Thomas, and Rodney Andari, I think when you stop the run game up the middle, and when you have guys who are moving like that, can get off blocks, I think that can play spoiler a little bit. And in fact, Oak Ridge played spoiler to Houston Christian last year. But I mean, one of the things that we've seen in 3A, as long as we've been doing this, is kind of when you get out of that top two, top three, anybody can really beat anybody on any day. And then in non-conference, those teams tend to struggle a little bit, whether it be a Country Day or an Oak Ridge, Cistercian. All of those teams kind of fall in the same bucket where, it's kind of a crapshoot in between who's going to win the games. But I could see Oak Ridge playing spoiler. But, I could also see Fort Worth Country Day played Houston Christian pretty close last year.
Yep.
Cistercian was able to beat St. Mark's last year. So I think anything can happen in those teams. But look out for Oak Ridge, at least on the defensive line side of things, to be pretty talented.
Yeah. And
under the, I will say under the reign of Matt Morrison at TVS, he still hasn't beaten Country Day. Country Day beat last year and the year before. So I think Country Day is primed to play spoiler. Maybe it's only to TVS, but we'll see. That'll be an interesting dynamic. Walker.
Yeah, the Battle of Brian Irvin is always a good one up there in Fort Worth. So yeah, they take it very seriously, and I love my rivalry with Fort Worth Trinity Valley, but I think TVS honestly takes more pride in the Battle of Brian Irvin more, and that just makes more sense. But they care about that one, anyways. Yeah. I would have also said Oak Ridge for sure, but I do like the Fort Worth Country Day Falcons. They've always been an interesting team with a lot of talent, but sometimes just lesser years than others. But Andrew Edwards is probably going to be one of the top quarterbacks in SPC 3A returning, and he had a good year last year. He's a decent quarterback. He's going to be really, really good for them. But Jackson Blomenhall, Dylan Davis, Jackson Brockway. Yeah, I think that I would love to say Cistercian, which, I'm a big Charlie Humphreys fan, and I'm proud that he's going to Yale. That's a great spot for him. Congratulations to him. Yeah, I think I just don't know if they have a lot of talent with also a new head coach coming back. They lose a lot, like Dan O'Toole and Natsu Unini leaving last year is huge. Graduating is huge for them. But Ryan Sproul is he looks a pretty good tight end defensive end for them, and Cade Burke is going to be there, and who's going to be really good for them, Michael Peterman. Those guys are going to be a really good squad for Cistercian. I just don't know if they have the overall talent to kind of compete with the top two again this year. But and I just want to say I'm excited to see how this Green Hill team does, man. We love Coach KJ here, and he's a great dude. One of the, I've not heard anything really bad about him. And coming into kind of, he was the strength and conditioning coach before his head coaching job in Nolan. And so being able to actually really maybe have a team where he can start the program and learn and, have that culture might be really good for him. And having a place like Green Hill where you can get really good athletes in there if you really want to, where they've done it for basketball for years. If they can do it for football too, where they got Caden Castillo, you lose Winston Black to graduation, who's probably your best player you've had in the past couple of years, and you lose Anthony Banks to Prestonwood. But kind of having this program under him, and a guy like Brandon Polk and Caden Castillo are going to be two guys that are going to be really essential for the restarting of this Green Hill program. So a lot of excitement and even under the top three. So I'm excited for this.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fantastic battle. We outlined the top three teams that we think are the real contenders here, but I think regardless, it's going to be a super fun race. It's going to be a super fun divisional run, like it always is in SPC 3A. So it'll be a good time. But before we get into SPC 4A, we're going to have a word from our sponsor, High Point Apparel. This episode is brought to you by High Point Signs and Apparel. Walker, we have worked with High Point Signs and Apparel. We love them. They're fantastic sponsors. All this sick apparel that we are putting out that we give into the quarterbacks, the camp shirts, the hats, the apparel shirts and hoodies, they're all made by High Point. They do a fantastic job. They don't miss deadlines. They provide exceptional customer service. Both me and Walker can attest to that. They will meet or beat any price, and they create online stores that can provide your employees with apparel, or they can be profit centers. You know, Walker, we're incredibly grateful for High Point, not only for sponsoring us, but for allowing us to fulfill a dream of ours in creating our own merchandise that I think, quite frankly, looks amazing. I mean, what are your thoughts on High Point Signs and Apparel and what they allow companies to do?
Yeah, it was an amazing experience with them, and we're still going to work with them continuously down the line. Nothing but great things to say about them, and even the online store that you just mentioned, we're going to have that for ourselves, and having able to, when y'all want to buy our merch in a couple of weeks, that's how we're going to do it through them. And so, George Jacobus is a great guy, and he kind of leads the team over there, and he's a father of private school kids. He loves the whatever the landscape and the community that we're trying to build, and there's no better way to help build the community than support High Point Apparel. So thank you guys over there for helping us out, and I'm excited to keep working with them, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any links to socials or websites for High Point Signs and Apparel will be located in our bio in the description of this episode. Please go through that link, check them out, set up a meeting with them. I promise you, if there is any better company for custom signs and apparel, I haven't found one yet. So go High Point Signs and Apparel, all the links in our description. And thank you yet again to High Point for sponsoring this episode. All right, guys. So all of that being said, we now are on the verge of previewing SPC 4A. Like I've said a million times before, incredibly fun division. Can never really pinpoint exactly what's going to happen. You always seem to look up, and all these teams that shouldn't be winning are winning, and it's beautiful to watch. I love the chaos. But I'm going to get straight into our power rankings, and I'm going to let Jack go off the rip and say our overview on the division. And I have a feeling, and I was also very uneasy about making these rankings because it doesn't seem right to me, but at the same time, it does. And we have to go with the information we have. So all of the wind up aside, the TXPS Media power rankings for SPCA go as follows. SPC 4A, my apologies. Number 1, Episcopal Bel Air. Number 2, St. John's. Number 3, Episcopal School of Dallas. Number 4, the reigning SPC 4A state champions, the Kincaid School. And at number 5, rounding out SPC 4A, we have St. Mark's. So, Jack, I think it's fitting that I turn to the Kincaid alum here in a poll that would seem by many that we vastly underrate Kincaid. I don't feel good about this at all, to be honest with you. I know we're going to look up in the last week in October, the first week of November, and Coach Larned and Kincaid are going to be playing for an SPC championship, and we had them ranked 4th in our poll. I know it's going to be shocking to some people to see St. John's go up to 2nd, et cetera, et cetera. Just what are your thoughts on the overall landscape of SPC 4A and how we have it predicted?
Yeah, so let me preface this by saying there are 4 teams out of 5 that could win a title. Episcopal, ESD, St. John's, and Kincaid, each of them have their strengths, have their weaknesses. Each of them could win a title. Each of them have great head coaches. Each of them won 7 games last year in the regular season. Each of them played each other close. ESD beat Episcopal. EHS beat Kincaid in the regular season. St. John's beat ESD. Kincaid beat St. John's. Episcopal beat St. John's. So they kind of all went back and forth.
Yep.
But to give our viewers a little more insight on how we do this, we create one power rankings for the whole podcast. That encompasses my opinion, Walker's opinions, and Wes's opinion. So when you look at it from a holistic point of view, and we have to go on what teams, have, what they return, that makes our job a lot more complex. Do I think Kincaid likely has a good chance to play for an SPC title? And I'm not just saying this because I went there. Absolutely. Coach Lauren had won with arguably the worst team he's ever coached last year against a pretty darn good Episcopal team. But Episcopal gets stronger this year. Carson Gordon, with the transfer of Brandon Thomas, who actually went to Kincaid in middle school. When I was at Kincaid, Brandon Thomas was there. Billy Wheelis committed to Brown. Losing losing Jordan Manuel stings a little bit, but he maybe didn't play the role that he thought he was going to play at Episcopal. You have Cullen Witt, you have Alex Lozada, you have even Jackson Ranucci or Brady Reed, Cullen Walton. Episcopal's a tremendously talented team. Coach Lease has been there a long time. He's won a lot. They have a very creative offensive coordinator in Coach Dan Casey and a really solid defensive coordinator in Jimmy Moynihan. So putting Episcopal aside with the talent they have, you have St. John's. No matter how you feel about where we rank St. John's, Coach Veltri has done a tremendous job taking over for Steve Gleaves. You know, when I started at Kincaid St. John's was not a competitive game. St. John's has run a spread offense for less than a decade. They ran the veer up until 2016, which is actually a pretty fun offense. It was cool being young at Kincaid watching the veer being run. Coach St. John's also has quite the Kincaid connection. Their new offensive line coach is none other than Tyler Higbee, who went to Kincaid, graduated in 2014, played professionally for a little bit in the USFL, and went to Michigan State. Blake McKay is a Kincaid alum, class of 2006, is their defensive coordinator. Kevin Veltri was the offensive coordinator under Coach Larned from 2014 to 2018. Coach Malone was a coach there as well for several years. They have Stephen Gill. They have Will Hoffrecht. They have Matthias Adroge as their kicker. They have a lot of really talented pieces. Cole Allen, who maybe changes the Kincaid game last year. You know, shoulda, coulda, woulda. We could have seen what happened, but he didn't play in that game. Losing Robert Reiser and Brown football player Pierce Leverett stings a little bit, but Coach Veltri is such an ingenious mind on offense. And St. John's has been knocking on the door. It's been over a decade since they beat Kincaid. They were able to snag a game from Episcopal in 2021, but got destroyed last year. But they beat a pretty good ESD team last year who had Teddy Sparrow and what was their quarterback's name? I don't think he ended up playing anyone.
Burke? Was it Burke?
Yeah, and Patrick, who had Teddy Sparrow and Patrick Burke. So then you move to ESD from St. John's, and there's not a big drop-off. Transfer quarterback Jake Jerky is the big story. A proven winner at Frisco Memorials, threw for 2,300 yards last year, played in great Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex competition in Frisco. You know, he's a 25, and, you know, he has Hutch Chipman leading the way. He's very talented tight end, was nominated for tight end of the year. Or receiver of the year, excuse me. And, you know, they were knocking on the door last year, 7 wins. They had an undefeated regular season in 2021. Coach Williams has done a nice job over there. In terms of talent, you know, when you look at talent, it's on paper, ESD looks the part. And then you get to my alma mater, Kincaid. Nico Gomez, Miles Rader, all of those, Parker Kibitza, Christopher Carlson, Oliver Eads, all of those guys have been on varsity for a couple seasons now. All of those guys are proven winners. They've gone back to back. You know, when it comes to experience, Kincaid has it, but they lose the star power of a Micah Bell. They don't have Dylan Bell. They don't have a Cam Henry. They don't have an Alex LeSuede. But at the same time, they have guys with experience and guys who are hungry. And as always, I'm bullish on my guys at Kincaid. I really do think they're gonna be able to steal a game from one of the top 3 contenders that we ranked, if not maybe more. They very well could compete for an SPC title. You know, each of the top 4 teams, you know, they won the same amount of games in the regular season. They beat each other. They play tough non-conference schedules. It's going to be a lot of fun. But then you factor in Kincaid has a quarterback this year, you know, which is both kind of a double-edged sword because, you know, David Capobianco was tremendous in 2021, was the newcomer of the year. But he doesn't have the same receiving core he's throwing to. He's not throwing the Cam Henry or Dylan Bell. I mean, as sad as that is for me to say, or even an Alex Gottsagen or Harrison Lawrence. You have a whole different cast of characters. And Nico Gomez and Miles Rader, they will take up the reins well. I have full confidence in that. But at the same time, you know, David has to show that he can dominate, and there's no doubt he's capable of it, but it's different when you don't have those targets. At the same time, David was injured. and reclassified. And while David trained and, I know did his thing and looked the part in 7-on-7, it's tough to substitute on-field in-game reps. ESD has and Episcopal and St. John, their starting quarterbacks all had tremendous seasons last year. There is no substitute for in-game reps, no matter how you slice it. Now, Kincaid's offense will take a step forward. It'll be a lot more productive. They won't be killing clock. David's going to be able to throw for a lot more. But at the same time, you don't have, a Dylan Bell or a Josh Williams or Victor Garza or Micah Bell. You don't have those guys running that wildcat offense that Kincaid's coming to know anymore. Will they run it with Miles Rader and Nico Gomez? Maybe so. But, only time will tell on that front. And then we move to St. Mark's. St. Mark's has really had a tough time with every team. They haven't beaten since before COVID. The only team that they've really beaten that was in 4A was Houston Christian before they dropped down, and most of their games weren't even very competitive. Coach Flaherty, has a great track record. Played professionally a little bit. Went to Princeton. Is part of the Garrett family. Jason and Judd Garrett are relatives of his. He's a proven leader. He was the head coach at the prestigious Lawrenceville Academy in New Jersey. But at the same time, they don't have too much outside of Henry Estes. And who was the other guy that you mentioned?
Lucas Blumenhall, the receiver.
And Lucas Blumenhall and Lucas Blumenhall, their receiver. It's just tough to really assess them. With their non-conference being not against maybe the best teams, it's tough to kind of gauge where they're at in terms of the SPC competition. But at the same time, they really did not play any competitive games, giving up 40 plus points to each team that wasn't each other team in that division. But I'll hit home that there's a lot of competition at the top. And just because, Episcopal's 1 and Kincaid's 4 and St. John's is 2 and ESD is 3 doesn't mean that, there's too much of a big drop off. You can't make up for what Coach Larned has been able to do in his time at Kincaid. He's won with the most talented team. He's won with arguably one of the least talented teams. Coach Veltry's done a tremendous job turning it around. Coach Lease is a proven winner. Coach Williams comes from a great pedigree, coaching at Kincaid before ESD and leading some great teams, winning titles in the lower division back when it was Division I, Division II. 2 years removed for an undefeated regular season with the likes of Chase Kennedy and Jaden Robinson. So all that being said, it's going to be a lot of fun. Like last year, there are going to be a lot of questions about the playoff format, and what really is a shame, and I do hope SPC at some point looks into this, is that last year you had 4 teams with 7 wins in the regular season. Only 2 of them got to play for a title. I really think it would be a lot more fun, especially in SPC 4A, if we could see the top 4 teams added in a playoff scenario, because really any of those teams could beat anybody. One of our contributors and a good friend of mine, David Cody, Episcopal alum, always said weird things happen in rivalry games. Anything can happen when a St. John's and Kincaid square off, when Episcopal and ESD square off. We saw it last year. So I don't think that there's going to be one team a cut above the rest, maybe like a Trinity Valley. I think that there's going to be a lot of fun this fall, and I can't wait to see those conference games in October.
But yeah, I think a big thing here is that it's not even really 1, 2, 3, and 4 at the top of SCZ 4A. I think it's like 1A, 1B, 1C, and 1D. I think all of those teams are so close together that it's too close to call right now. Like I've said a billion times, we're going to look up late in the season, and Kincaid's going to beat EHS. St. John's is going to have beaten ESD, and it's going to be a complete just pretzel of rankings. I am disappointed, since I'm going to be in Dallas this year. This is probably going to be the first year since I've started covering that I won't be at the Kincaid St. John's game at Rice, which pound for pound might be my favorite experience I've had in the last 2 years. Going to that game at Rice every year is so fun for me. And I might have to find a way to make it down to Houston and cover that, because that's always super, super fun. But that being said, Jack's done a tremendous job of outlining the landscape of SPC 4A. There's a lot to talk about. Is there anything that stands out to you specifically specifically when you look at these 5 teams.
Yeah, I mean it's just going to be interesting to see because if you talk Division 1 talent, of course Episcopal has the number 1, like all of that, and they had it also last year too, and they didn't end up succeeding in their goals. So how does that come back? And they added the kid from Ridge Point coming in, the defensive lineman. I forget his name on the top of my head. Wes, if you can find that for me, that'd be awesome. But you also add BJ Thomason from Houston Lamar, who that's a huge addition for them at the running back spot. Also, just an athlete too, who's going to add a big addition to this offense that they desperately needed. Not desperately, but with Linebarger and others leaving last year, you needed kind of a bigger impact player on offense, and you add that in BJ Thomas. And having him on offense and the guy on defense, and you move you had Logan Barty also to that receiver room, and the offensive line has always been great there at EHS. And you might lose a couple of guys on the defensive line. That's going to be something you're going to have to figure out this fall, is who kind of replaces some of those guys like Jason Otah from last year, as having those kind of guys. That's going to be
Hutch Coward as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I was the other guy I was trying to think of. But yeah, him too. Those guys on the defensive line are going to be 2 guys that they're desperately going to have to figure out how do we replace them. And they have guys like, do you have the guy pulled up from Ridge Point?
No,
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Okay. I thank you guys. You're my statisticians. Anyways, but yeah, that's a big piece of this EHS team. But with the UNLV commit at the helm, who I think even taking a step forward this year is going to be really, really good. And I think he's going to kind of come for blood, because there is not many ways to lose that are worse than not really getting the ball for like 13 minutes in the second half, and not really being able to do anything about it. And that was hard. That's a hard way to lose in if you were EHS.
Walker, I got an answer for you. His name is, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Tyler Sasarski.
Yes, yeah, that is yes. Exactly him. Yeah, I think he hit like the 800-pound club as like going into a junior year at Ridge Point, which is huge, and adding him to the defensive line, with guys like Madden Morgan and other guys behind him, Braylon Thompson as well. That's a big, good defense. But going to my point, back to my point was, there's not many ways to kind of hardly like that doesn't hurt more than maybe the only way that hurts more is probably like a game-winning touchdown at the very end to just seal it. Not being able to stop the run for good 13 minutes in a game in the second half, and them winning it by only scoring with a field goal at the end of that 13-minute drive or whatever it was, that's heartbreaking way to lose. And they went and drove, and drove to the other side of the field, and then they kind of stopped. But that's a terrible way to lose. I'm not like it sucks. And hopefully they probably have taken that and be like, that's not going to happen again. And they'll probably have that mindset that we're not even going to get into that position. So I also kind of that reason is kind of why we put them number 1, is where they're kind of coming for that little chip on their shoulder, being like, no, that's not going to happen again with the talent we have. So that's a big reason I think EHS is number 1. But other guys like St. John's is going to be an interesting thing, because they have a lot of talent. And I think Cole Allen might be one of the best athletes, if not the best athlete in all of TAPS or SPC 4A. And I'm a huge fan of Cole Allen since I first saw him. And Stephen Gill is probably going to be one of the best, passers in the SPC. And I think having that combination with, Logan Donnelly, Michael Murphy, Will Hofrecht, guys like that is going to be huge. And, they have a 2027 guy that I saw at the thing where he was big into the basketball, already got a Big 12 offer for basketball at 6'5". I don't know if he's grown any bit more, and I don't know if he's still going to play football this upcoming year, but if he does, that's a starting defensive end you have there for St. John's, and also receiver for them maybe. So that's going to be a key piece if he plays. But Malachi Booker, his name is Malachi Booker at 6'5", 185. He's going to be maybe a defensive end for them if he plays football, but that's another key piece for them. The interesting thing for them is going to be the offense and defensive lines. It's not their strongest suit. It's never really been for the past couple of years. If they can put something together to where they can protect Steven against like the teams like Bel Air and ESD and Kincaid, they have a chance to sustain that second spot we really have them in, because the offensive firepower, they've competed with everyone in the state offensively. They're just being able to compete against probably the better teams with when they're in the trenches is probably going to be the key piece for them. And to kind of say other stuff, ESD is going to be the interesting thing. I kind of lied to you, Jack, earlier when I said he threw for 2,300 yards. He only threw for 914, so that's on me. So I don't think he played the whole year, so that's on me. You can take that, whoever like going to quote him on that.
Taking that back.
Yeah,
please.
So that's on me. But he threw. I'm going to guess he only played half the year because he was a sophomore at the time. But he had the ratio of 10 touchdowns to 1 interception for a sophomore starting in his first season. That's a pretty good ratio, and I'm excited to see how he does. He's a talented quarterback, and if he's going to even start, is Johnny Willingham going to start? I'm going to guess Jake, but he's the guy who's been there through the system, and Johnny and Nick Wheeler, Hutch Chipman, Owen Belson, and also Owen Belson and Dario Benagalia coming in from Houston Memorial with Jake is also key additions for the squad. And also Jordan Hutchinson, the 25 wide receiver, is another top 5, top 6 wide receiver in the 2025 class. So having a lot of the weapons they have, ESD could be primed to be something special. And Kincaid, he did the down the list for Kincaid. I'm not going to talk more about your guys, but those guys, like you said, just like last year, they went 3-1, 2-2, 2-2, and 3-1. These guys fought and battled for those kind of top 2 spots last year, where a lot of games didn't go some people's way, and in other games you're like, okay, this is how it is. And then next week it was the completely different. And we had to keep changing rankings all the time because people beat people that you might have not thought, but that's SPC 4A. They compete, man. And even though we have maybe Kincaid 4th, like we said, like Jack said previously, they're fighting for that top spot, and they will love to fight for that top spot. So I would love to say, like, yeah, maybe Kincaid are a little bit of an underdogs, but you can't really call the reigning state champs underdogs because that's just who they are. So it's going to be interesting to see, and I'm going to love this SPC 4A matchup this year, the battles that they have.
I'm really excited to see. Sorry, you go, Wes, and then I'll go.
No, you're good. I'm just going to wrap it up. You go.
Oh, okay. I'm really also excited to see I'm really excited to see Walker, just jumping off your point, especially ESD, Kincaid, and Episcopal. Look for them. They have some pretty good non-conference schedules. Kincaid opens up against Jasper, who has a lot of really good talent. Yep. Episcopal has Parish week 2. ESD has TCA Addison and Liberty Christian. And even St. John's opens up with a super talented St. Thomas team. So we're going to be able to know a lot about these teams with how they handle their business, playing some really good TAPS competition as well as some good public school competition as well.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's gonna be a fun time. All these teams are gonna get tested really early, and we're gonna know pretty well what they're made of right off the rip. But guys, we've talked extensively about both SPC 3A and 4A. We've given you a really deep breakdown on pretty much all the competition there. Like I said, it's going to be a fun time as always. But before we get out of here, we have one last item of business, and that is the overall SPC power rankings. We do this with every division. We go through and rank the individual districts. And at the end of the episode, we go and we rank SPC 3A and 4A combined. So without further ado, let's jump straight into that. At number 1, we have Bel Air Episcopal. At number 2, we have Houston St. John's. At number 3, we have Episcopal School of Dallas. At number 4, we have the first SPC 3A team, Trinity Valley. At number 5, we have Kincaid. At number 6, we have Houston Christian. At number 7, we have the John Cooper School. At number 8, we have St. Mark's. At number 9, we have Irving Cistercian. And rounding out the list at number 10, we have Fort Worth Country Day. So, guys, we've talked extensively about all of these teams. We don't need to go through and rehash the exact rankings and the details on the team. But, Jack, just quickly, we've got these 10 teams here. Is there anything that sticks out to you about the 10 teams that we've compiled in the combined SPC power rankings?
Yeah, I think first of all, you got to preface it by saying it's a little tough to compare 4A and 3A just because, just in terms of number 1, strength of schedule, number 2, size. Comparing talent can also be a little misleading, especially if, you have a really talented player on, say Trinity Valley, who's maybe playing against a little bit of weaker competition versus maybe Kincaid, who's maybe a little bit weaker in terms of talent, but is a proven winner at the 4A level. So that's a little tough. Again, guys, I can't stress enough. We have to, these are a collective rankings really based on, talent and what they have going forward. We really can't look back maybe as much as we'd like to. But I think these do a good job. And I would say really kind of a similar thing to the 4A where these are very fluid.
Yeah.
You have, 1 week is going to be the difference. And there's going to be a lot of shuffling around. And I'm curious to see how Trinity Valley ends up standing. It would be really cool if some of these better 3A teams could play the 4A teams and you could really see head to head. Does Trinity Valley being ahead of Kincaid mean that, Trinity Valley 100% would beat Kincaid in a head to head matchup? No, it doesn't mean that at all. But in terms of maybe talent, they're pretty comparable teams. So, with that being said, I'll hand it over to Walker. But I just think that you have to keep that in mind when we're looking at this from a holistic point of view. I think you got to keep in mind that there are at the top. There's a lot of teams that are pretty close, and then there's kind of a big drop off once you get past Kincaid and maybe to a lesser extent John Cooper and Houston Christian.
Sure. Yeah. You got to really think about talent a lot in these preseason rankings, and that's why Texas is always ranked so high, and then they always fall off. Anyways,
I love a subtle jab at the University of Texas.
As
sorry.
always,
you shouldn't have caught me with a mouthful of water. I wasn't expecting that.
Sorry, I do think they're going to be good this year. Let's pump the brakes before we finally say they're back. Anyways, A&M 10-2 record this year. Just mark my words.
Absolutely.
Anyways, going into the next stage, of private school talk. Yeah, I think the rankings are pretty good, man. There's not much to say. I think it's kind of makes sense if you look at it. I think TVS is going to maybe prove itself as just not just a top 3A team, but actually a really good team this year. And I think that's going to solidify them in that top 5 spot. But a team like Houston Christian, if they have an offensive just firestorm this year and they score a lot of points and have a lot of wins, you could see them jumping up too. But I really like how it's ranked. I think this team is good. Like we said not that long ago, with the top 4 in the SPC 4A, it's going to be solidified, and you're going to see these rankings change a lot over the next couple of weeks. So,
absolutely, yeah. I will end it by saying this. If you remember any of our preseason rankings from last year, right after week 1, they all got absolutely shelled. It was chaos. Expect that to maybe happen again this year. I'm not going to say that we're just, putting up a dartboard of teams and just blindfold and throwing darts, but we put a lot of work into this. But at the same time, I always like to say the game's not played on paper. We do this to get a really good idea of who these teams are based on returning production and quote unquote talent, which is just kind of a quantitative or qualitative thing. None of this matters until the team step on the gridiron. And we're going to see week 1 how these teams fare. And especially as we get deeper into SPC play, I'm really, really excited to see which of these teams that we have ranked, 4, 5, 6 start beating teams that are 1, 2, 3. It's always the most fun part of football season for me to see the underdog, the team that's not supposed to come and beat any of these top dogs, really just rise up and start being like, hey, it's our time. We're here. So I'm sure that we will see that more or less as the season progresses. But guys, that being said, that is our deep dive SPC preview. Jack, I want to say, number 1, thank you. We greatly appreciate your help with this. This doesn't get done without you. We're greatly appreciative for you, Alex, Cody, anyone that contributes on the SPC side of things. As everyone knows, both Walker and I are much more familiar with TAPS football. We've grown to know a lot about SPC, but it helps us a lot to have guys who grew up in SPC around that culture that really know what they're doing. So, dude, thank you. It means a lot to us. Is there anything that you want to leave the viewers with before we get out of here?
Yeah, I'm very, very thankful, like I said, to have this opportunity to help you guys in the analyst department, helping out with SPC stuff, but also providing, insight on the Friday Night Twitter space and creating original content on the website. And, all I got to say is, man, is look for the TXPS Media Group to do some pretty special stuff. There's a lot of great stuff coming. Walker Lott has done a tremendous job. I can't thank him enough. for his advice and mentorship. At Wes, you as well, Ryan. I think we got a great team. There's some special stuff coming, so y'all stay tuned because this train is only going to get better and better and better. I'm glad I got in when I did, and I think this is going to be a really, really fun year. I look forward to being around, helping you guys out, and just watch for our content, like, subscribe, share. We do this. We do this. You know, we all got our own things going on, whether it be internships, college, you know, work stuff, you name it. You know, we're all at different points in our lives, but we still love doing this. So we do this for you guys. We do this to help boost you guys, help you guys get, you know, maybe even help get recruited. But we do it because we love it. Because Texas private school football changed my life, changed Wes's life, changed Alex's life, changed Walker's life. You know, and this is our way of giving back, paying it forward. And I hope that, you know, to anybody who you know is hanging up the cleats, find ways to get involved, whether it be working in your athletic department, you know, like I do over at Columbia, or Walker, you know, worked with Tex Ags. Find ways to get involved to you know, keep giving back to the game that gave so much to us. I think that you know, you can pay it forward for the next generation. It doesn't have to go away when you you know, you finish up your senior year of football. So
Absolutely.
That was
Yeah,
amazing.
I couldn't say it better. You took the words right out of my mouth. Is that I say all the time, we do it because we love it. Walker Lott. It's going to be very hard to follow that up. Don't at all feel compelled to give the full speech that Jack did. But any closing thoughts you want to leave the viewers with for this episode?
No, I won't say much. Still looking for interns. So if anyone's still watching this end of the episode, reach out to us about that. Apparel will be dropping soon in a couple weeks before the season starts. So look out for that. And yeah, if also I'll be back down in Fort Worth or Houston next week. I know Wes will be up in DFW for the next couple of weeks. If there's any really good scrimmages, we might head out to maybe on a Friday, go watch that. But besides that, leave out honestly with Jack's message more than mine. So yeah, thank you guys.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you both for joining us for this episode. I had a great time. It's always fun previewing the SPC. But all that being said, as always, I've been 1/3 of your hosting crew, Wes Tolleson. Walker Lott and Jack Klosek have fantastically been themselves. We will see you in the next episode. See you later.
3, 2, 1.